America's in distress, with our future on the line. Look around, it's a mess, we took a turn. Now everything you say is offensive, and we slowly losing our freedom, ain't got no defense.
We can raise the black flag if they want war. Had mercy for the enemy, but don't know more. We can raise the black flag if they want war. Had mercy for the enemy, but don't know more.
I have a message from America, but I don't know what I can say. They want to silence my voice, taking
This country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flags. American flags. American flags. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flags.
It's the same old theme since 1916. In your head, they're still fighting with their tanks and their bombs and their bombs and their guns. In your head, they are dying. What's in your head? In your
So a few people have been asking me, what does the black flag mean? Well, I'll tell you exactly what it means. It means no quarter shall be given. What that means is you will be killed rather than taken prisoner. It's the exact opposite of the white flag. White flag means surrender. Black flag means no quarter given. Blood red flag, it means don't go anywhere fucking near them because you're gonna die either way. They have no regard for human life. Stay far the fuck away from them. I'll fly this flag all day long. I won't go anywhere near anyone flying a blood red flag.
I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your huckleberry. We started a game we never got to finish.
I was just fooling about.
We see the serpents.
One day I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.
I know the truth.
The black American flag first appeared during the American Civil War of 1861 to 1865. Soldiers flew the black flag to symbolize the opposite of the white flag of surrender. The black flag meant that the unit would not give in nor surrender. No quarter will be given.
Cause these are my people, and this is my land. This is what we pray for, and this is God's plan. And if you ain't from here, then you won't understand. This is my country.
We've got some breaking news just in, folks. The US President Joe Biden has secretly given Ukraine permission to strike inside Russia with American weapons. Mark Stone following the story from Washington now.
It is the American president accepting that the situation on the ground has changed and accepting too that there is little question that Russia has the upper hand in this long, long war that he would like to have been over with a Ukrainian victory some time ago. The reporting at the moment is thin, and it is US officials talking to our colleagues at NBC News here in Washington saying that President Biden has secretly given Ukraine permission to strike inside Russia, solely near the area of Kharkiv. That's Ukraine's second city in the far east of the country, right up near the front line with the Russian advance. That is the only detail we've got at the moment, but it comes after an interesting statement that Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, made just yesterday when he was in Moldova talking about Ukraine, and he said that one of the hallmarks of our support for Ukraine for more than 2 years now has been to adapt. He said as the conditions have changed, the battlefield has changed, as what Russia has done has changed, we have adapted, adjusted, and I'm confident we will continue to do that. Well, what this is, I think, is precisely that. It is adapting to a fast-changing situation on the ground. It is now approaching the height of summer in Ukraine. That is the best time for Russia to be able to advance. It is also the best time weather-wise for Ukraine to be able to try and push back. Of course, Dominic, the dangers of this and the reason why hitherto the Americans have been very reluctant to provide Ukraine with weapons that would enable them to attack far inside Russia itself is simply that would potentially give the Russian president the ability to claim that America is attacking Russia proper. Two nuclear powers, the stakes would be very, very high. But this is certainly a very big decision. It's being described as secret. It's hardly secret now. A very big decision by the American president. He's talking, as I say, about areas around Kharkiv. Remember, the front line is very close to that, to the east of the city itself. The Russian border is only 30 or so miles to the north of Kharkiv. So the distances are not great. And what the Ukrainians want to do is to be able to push that front line as far east as they can. The further east they can push that front line, the narrower the country is there, and therefore the smaller or the shorter the border that they would have to defend if they ever came to some sort of resolution which would see them giving up some land.
Mara Pamuk with Reuters.
Hello, good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. I have two questions, one on Ukraine, one on Gaza. So the Biden administration has allowed Ukraine to strike targets inside Russia to defend Kharkiv. Do you leave the door open for this decision to be expanded to other cities and targets that are deeper inside Russia? And since it took the Biden administration a while to make this decision, I'm wondering, do you think you were too cautious? Or has your intelligence assessment on the possibility of Putin using tactical nuclear weapons has shifted? And on Gaza, the UN said humanitarian aid going into Gaza has dropped by 2/3 since Israel began its Rafah offensive. Your colleague, USAID Administrator Samantha Power, who's an expert on genocide, yesterday said the humanitarian conditions in Gaza were now worse than ever. On April the 4th, President Biden conditioned U.S. military aid to Israel on improvement of the aid situation, among other things. So I'm wondering, why isn't the current dire picture in Gaza triggering a bigger policy shift? Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. So with regard to the use of U.S. arms by Ukraine and Russia, I said this the other day. The hallmark of our engagement, our support for Ukraine over these more than 2 years, has been to adapt and adjust as necessary to meet what's actually going on the battlefield, to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs, when it needs it, to do that deliberately and effectively. And that's exactly what we're doing in response to what we've now seen in and around the Kharkiv region. Over the past few weeks, Ukraine came to us and asked for the authorization to use weapons that we're providing to defend against this aggression, including against Russian forces that are massing on the Russian side of the border and then attacking into Ukraine. And that went right to the president and, as you've heard, he's approved the use of our weapons for that purpose. Going forward, we'll continue to do what we've been doing, which is, as necessary, adapt and adjust. And that, as I said, has been a hallmark of our engagement. It will continue to be. As I've also said many, many times, we want to make sure that we're proceeding deliberately as well as effectively. So I think time and again, we've adapted, we've adjusted, we've provided Ukraine with the systems, the weapons that's needed. But again, as I've shared with you many times before, for example, when it comes to weapon systems, we also want to make sure that they have the necessary training to use the weapons and they have the necessary capacity to maintain them. So you have to look at this in a comprehensive way. And I think if you look back, as well as look at what we're doing now, it reflects very deliberate determination to make sure that we're getting Ukraine what they need when they need it. With regard to Gaza and the humanitarian situation, the humanitarian situation remains dire for people in Gaza. We've seen changes, some positive changes, but the net effect is not there. The positive changes are that, of course, crossings in the north have been opened in recent weeks, including Zakim. We have a route from Jordan that is getting trucks in. If you look at the number of trucks that are actually getting to Gaza and going in, it's up significantly. But distribution within Gaza is not working effectively. And part of the reason for that are the combat operations in the south. In addition, Rafah gate continues to be closed. President Biden secured an agreement with Egypt and with Israel to make sure that goods could go through Kerem Shalom, including goods coming from Egypt. But Rafah remains closed, and that's a real problem. So the focus that we have, continue to have, and are working on intensely every day, is, again, making sure that we're not just measuring inputs, we're measuring impact. And yes, the impact remains insufficient in terms of addressing the acute needs of children, women, and men in Gaza. But it's a moving story every day as we're working intensely to make sure that the different access points are working, and then distribution within Gaza is working more effectively. And that's what we're focused on.
Ukraine can now use U.S. weapons to strike Russia on Russian soil. This is the latest news in the last day from the Biden administration, not Bush. Basically, Ukrainians for a while now have been trying to get permission to be able to hit Russian targets in Russia itself. Why would they want to do that? Because Ukraine has a huge border with Russia. The Russians come right up to the edge of the border and they fire into Ukraine. And Ukraine cannot use Western weapons to fire back across the border. So in other words, they couldn't even use Western artillery to hit Russian artillery across the border. It's crazy. Well, a number of European countries in the last couple of weeks have basically changed their mind and said, yes, go for it. The Brits said it. The French said it. Even the Germans kind of said it. And Biden administration was the big holdout of the top countries, at least. And finally, the Biden administration yesterday said, okay, but there's a caveat. You can use it. You can use American weapons to strike anything across the border that is being used to strike Kharkiv, Ukraine. In other words, the big attack that's going on right now, the big Russian assault near Kharkiv, second largest city in the northeast, anything that's being used to attack Kharkiv, you can hit across the border. But you can't hit anything else. You can't hit anything that isn't being used for Kharkiv. They don't want the Ukrainians, for example, to use American weapons to go longer range and hitting Russian bases, things like that. Still, the caveat's a bit annoying, but still it's a big deal that the Biden administration finally came around. They came around under pressure because everybody else came around. And as I've said before, we're 2.5 years into this war. We should either be trying to win this or not. We shouldn't be coming up with like new things that we suddenly said, oh, let's let the Ukrainians do this. We should have been letting them do this stuff 2.5 years ago, but it's still good news, so that's good. Russians are pissed. Oh, well.
So, somewhat taking a back seat to the Donald Trump verdict is the fact that Joe Biden has approved Ukraine to strike Russian territory with U.S.-provided weapons. Things like ATACMS missiles, Patriot air defenses shooting down Russian aircraft over Russia, etc. There is a caveat, though, and that caveat is the U.S.-provided weapons can only be used to defend the Kharkiv region. So I've already highlighted that area in blue. This is Kharkiv Oblast in blue here. The yellow is the border between Ukraine and Russia. And then this red is a range fan for ATACMS missiles. So Basically, the way this works is the Ukrainians can strike Russian territory while defending Kharkiv. So this is the city right here. You notice there's some key areas. The first of which is Belgorod. All of these units in Belgorod are definitely within range of the ATACMS. The gloves are off for hitting those specific units. The next one is Voronezh. This is where there's training bases and air assets and air defenses. Kursk is another one. And then there's small units that run along the border. Now, I don't know the specifics of what is being said as to how this defense can work. Are they allowed to attack things this far? The way it reads is the defense is allowed to take place in defending Kharkiv if the attack is aimed at Kharkiv. So does that mean that Rostov-on-Don, which is where the Southern Military District's headquarters is, can they defend themselves from, or can Ukraine defend from an attack from there, perhaps a missile strike? Not sure. I feel like that might be a bit of a stretch. What I think the intent is here is to counter any attacks that come near the Kharkiv region. So we're talking here, coming out of Kursk, Voronezh, Belgorod, air strikes that might be coming across this region, and definitely cross-border incursions in this region right here. It's a first step. It's a baby step, but it is a step nonetheless. It is countering Putin's kind of doubling down on his saber-rattling rhetoric. The U.S. is showing that they will not be threatened in this case, and as such, incrementally, President Biden has allowed Ukraine to use U.S. weapons in Russia for the first time. Not the first country to do so. There are 12 other countries that are allowing Ukraine, some of which are unrestricted, to strike into Russian territory, including the United Kingdom, who is giving Storm Shadow missiles.